Hello.
It's been a while.
It has.
I'm so excited to talk to you because you've been up to some really interesting things that I really, for myself, want to know more about, let alone share them. So let me start by quickly recapping how I met you. We met like many moons ago when I was doing Utelier, the manufacturing platform, right? And
Yeah.
I remember you somehow, well, online you found me and you connected and you asked for some help. And I distinctly remember you asking me, can I help you find a factory that only was working with women? And it was ethical and it was in Morocco. I think Morocco or Tunisia, well, I can't remember. But it was one of these two.
Yeah, it
And I
was.
remember thinking, oh my God, like anything else on that list? Because in those countries, quite often men work in factories. I was like, what is she thinking? She's completely clueless. And then I got to know you better. I saw your brand. I can't remember if I was able to help you or not, but I'm sure that you found the right manufacturer because your brand grew from there. So pick up the story from there. Tell me about what kind of brand you had and all that.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Hayat, and 6.5 years ago, I started a company called Neon Moon, which was a feminist lingerie brand for women of all shapes and sizes. And yeah, I distinctly remember like seeing you, Dessy, at a talk. You had a panel talk all about, sourcing manufacturers within fashion. I was very kind of like new. I think at the time we were just working with solely one UK factory. And obviously with UK manufacturing, it was super expensive and super slow. And my brand was kind of slotting amongst like the bigger brands. So I had to like wait for a slot to be free. So that's why I was definitely looking around. But that was the brand I started. It was called Neon Moon.
And you said feminist. What? Why would you describe it like this? Like, what made it feminist?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things at the time, before I even decided to set up the brand, I knew that marketing was going to be the major defining factor because I didn't have a lot of money and I didn't really know what I was doing. But I thought the way that I can get the brand out is to have a true stance on something. And at the time when I created Neon Moon, it was 2014 and feminism was still a bit of a taboo. I think that was just when Emma Watson was coming out as saying like feminists speak about feminist topics and subjects, and the news was just up in arms. It was just like, what is feminism? So I thought that at the time, well, Victoria's Secret were the major player within the lingerie industry, and they were very much, like, here's a standard of narrow beauty that we should all admire and all fit into. So having looked at all of the women that were going into the Victoria's Secret shops, I was like, they don't look like the models, and why should they? So the element of feminism came in terms of the sizing that we were able to offer, the representation within our images, our words that we were using were very much like not pink, not flimsy and like, feminine, were more like bolshy and bold. And it really hit a nerve in a very good way towards our customers or potential customers, because they were like, I have never seen at the time a brand that showed women with stretch marks, with typical flaws that Victoria's Secret would Photoshop out. And that's why the feminist element definitely distinguished the fact of Neon Moon within this, very competitive marketplace.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. After we spoke, I checked out your website. And like you said, it was 2014, 15, maybe when we spoke. Back in those days, the scene is not the way it is now. Now seeing, bigger models with stretch marks, all of this, it's not that unusual. But I remember distinctly getting onto your website and being shocked because the first model, I think, was overweight. She had hair on her armpits. I was like, oh, what? And also your underwear was more like short vests. It was more like bralettes. It wasn't, at the time, everything was like, if you remember, push-up bras, underwire. Yours was completely the opposite.
Yeah.
What gave you the bravery to go against the grain? Because it's a small brand, pouring investment into it, going into manufacturing, we all know it's not cheap and all that. What gave you the bravery to go in that direction and be like literally the black sheep on the scene?
I think predominantly my personal circumstance, which was I had just been fired from my last job. I joked that I had a knack for getting fired just because I was such a pain. And my personal circumstance at the time was I was just like sofa surfing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a job. I didn't have an income. And at the time I had reached out to the Prince's Trust, who helped me a lot in terms of their enterprise program and setting up and even learning how to run a feasible business. So I literally had nothing to lose, Dessy. And I think that kind of translated into the boldness of it, because I thought, do I really care about the people online on the internet who might not like what I do? And in some ways, it created this sort of Marmite effect where the customers that I did go after, who I thought was kind of like me, right? So I was always thinking, would I like this? Would I be shocked? Would I look into it more if I was like really surprised by what I was seeing? And I thought, yes. So what it enabled me to do was a very effective marketing, because in some ways the boldness and the shock factor brought in the people who loved it and pushed the people who hated it away. So essentially it made all of my marketing efforts very efficient. It was like, not only did the press pick it up, so we were like featured, or well, I say we, it was literally me at the, at a table in my friend's house, featured in like the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, even like Cosmopolitan magazine. It was so shocking. It was like getting so much press coverage. And then the women just like flocked to it. So the boldness really came from, I had nothing to lose. I really didn't care. And also I thought, well, if I'm really going to be a major player, or at least have this brand be a major player in the scene, I don't think I can do it without being bold and without them remembering it, whether they hate it or they love it. All I wanted was they remember it and they share it, and they work like, screenshot it and share it with their friends. And they're like, oh, yeah.
How did you know so much about marketing? Did you study marketing or?
No, I never studied marketing. I was an economics graduate at university, and I think I was just good at learning from other companies and other brands. What I love to do, which is, I think, maybe the weirdest thing, but maybe it's led me to this point, was I love to break down what made a successful brand and what didn't. And I love looking at advertising campaigns and seeing what worked. And I naturally gravitate to the ones that are bold and a bit bolshy and a bit like different. And I think I naturally translated that without ever thinking about it in terms of Neon Moon's branding. So that's why sometimes I think that, in all honesty, the success of a brand really does lie with the person who's created it, because you bring along all of your baggage and all of your, the good and the bad of you kind of like, you see it in this person's business. It's very interesting. So yeah, no formal background though.
Why did you decide to do lingerie? I mean, like traditionally, it's a pain in the butt to do lingerie. There's a lot of, it seems easy, but it's not, getting the fit right and all that. So I mean, I know yours was simpler, but even then, what made you go lingerie and not something else?
Yeah, good question. At the time, I never knew how difficult it was, I will be honest, before I even got into it. Why I picked lingerie was I knew that that was a market that women spend a lot of money on. It's something that, everyone typically has. So there's kind of a mass market element to it. And I had done a lot of research, because the business library in London, they allow you to look at like their free Mintel reports and stuff. So I was like reading their reports like day and night whenever I could go to the library. And I just knew that it was the first thing that you put on, so it's closest to your body. I feel like there's some sort of element in that. And there's also that pain point where I feel like women or girls always have that pain point of having their first bra fitted. And for me, I knew that I hated that experience. It was just so gross. So that's why I was like, okay, it has to be lingerie. I started off with that reason first, and then I figured out, okay, what makes a bra and what makes a knicker. And I was shocked, Dessy, when I went to like, the UK manufacturer to find out what it actually takes to build a bra. I was like, you are kidding me. This is literally like an art form. And I had no idea. So that's why I kept it simple, because I was like, okay, I cannot afford all of the different, bra cups and sizes that way. So let me bring out bralettes, which again, at the time wasn't even a thing. Like, you would never believe it, but it literally wasn't a thing. I feel like we started some sort of weird trend in bralettes that for some reason, bralettes are now associated with body positivity and with feminism. I feel like Neon Moon was definitely the first one to set that off, and other lingerie brands have learned from that. So if anything, it was more from a cost-effective point of view, and because I thought, well, I feel like that a bralette is able to show the natural shape of the boob as well. So it kind of worked out.
I have to say, I've always kind of watched you from the sidelines and admired how you build the brand, how brave you are. And hearing your story now, it just brings it all back to me. So then what happened? So did you find your Moroccan or Tunisian manufacturer?
So we actually ended up in China. So I did visit a bunch of different Moroccan manufacturers because I'm from Morocco as well. So it was a good trying to find it to go back home to the motherland sort of thing. But ultimately it didn't work out. And then I ended up sourcing from China. And so that was like the last manufacturer that we were using before I then like sold the company.
Okay, so you've come to the end very quickly. Okay, let's go there then, since you've gone there. What made you sell it? So I remember at the start of the pandemic last year, you announced, because you've always been very open, you kind of always, in my opinion, overshared only because I share so little. And you put in, you know, a post, I think it was on LinkedIn, I saw it, and you said, I've got some exciting news coming. And I was like really intrigued because I know how fast you were growing, etc. And when you revealed your news that you were shutting down the company, I was literally shocked because that was I did not expect that, full stop. And then all of a sudden you put another update, said that you've sold it. And I was like rejoicing, but super curious. So what happened?
Yeah. So it kind of links back to a point that I mentioned around, the founders, baggage being part of the business. So for example, I had started Neon Moon when I was like 24. And I had reached the age of 30 where I started to think about my life, and building the company, I had foregoed a lot of personal stuff. So I didn't have a lot of friends, or the friends that I did have had their own businesses. So we would usually spend time speaking about business. At the time when I first started the company, I was engaged, but that fell through. So I didn't have a boyfriend or a partner at the time. And I guess that age, for some reason, it kicked into gear. Okay, what do I want as a woman in my life, sort of thing. And I guess I started to internally think, and I didn't see the company being part of it anymore, because I thought that the company took away more from me personally, but gave a lot to my customers. So it's the trickiest situation to be in. So that's why I decided either this company is going to burn with me, so I'm going to burn it to the ground and let it go down that way, which was initially where I was going with, because I had never thought that anyone could ever take on the gravitas of that brand and that company that I would. And I felt like it was my baby. And I think everyone like yourself who knew me more than people who know me off the internet understood how much that business meant to me, because I was putting in 16-hour days consistently for 6 years. Like the momentum that I kept up, like you could not stop me. So that's why then when I put out the post saying, actually, I'm going to shut this down, I'm burning it to the ground, I'm done, I'm going to live my life. Then that's when luckily a person in my network reached out. He's a great investor friend, and he's also been a bit of a mentor to me. And he had sold his company before, and he knew, because he was speaking about my brand to loads of people with loads of money essentially, and he knew a high net worth lady who was definitely interested in my company and had been for a few years. So that was her opportune moment to speak to me, and I was open to it for once, because I've had offers in the past of people wanting to buy my business, and I'm literally giving them the middle finger, just being like, no, it is mine. No, I wasn't really like that. I was more open and nice.
But did you never think about, let's say, hiring someone to run it for you, or let's say branching out into women's wear or accessories or something that's going to give you new energy, new passion or something?
Yeah, I did.
Do.
We actually tried swimwear. I think it was like a year before the end. and that was okay, but it didn't give me the passion. I don't know what it was, but there was some turning point where I just didn't feel the same passion. And for some reason, I think it's normal. Like within entrepreneurship, there's this very toxic relationship between the founder always having to hustle and never quitting. Apparently, quitting is bad. I don't know if that's deemed as quitting, but I feel like it's more important for the mental health of a person to actually say, is this business serving me or is it not? Because essentially, why we set up a business, in my mind, is to give us a life that we want to lead, either it be more monetary or building a brand or whatever, right? So taking away from that, is it serving me? No, it wasn't towards the end, and I don't feel like enough people speak about that, where it can serve in my mid 20s, but towards my 30s it wasn't. So that was kind of the deeming factor. No product, no amount of sales, no new boutiques, no new customers could ever have put any more into my passion for it. So I was kind of like, yeah, I think this is my time now.
So it's nothing to do with the pandemic, because I just assumed that maybe the pandemic gave you some manufacturing problems. I thought it was the pandemic forcing you to close your business. That's why I even more felt really kind of sad.
What the pandemic did was it just proved to me that I just wasn't willing to have it anymore, because at the time, yes, there were definitely more manufacturing issues, because obviously we were dealing with China, and it was like, okay, you know, what are they doing? Are they shutting down? Are they closing up? What can we do? Can we source from the UK? But they then got their stuff together, so they were able to still source and create more lingerie items for us. And at the time, I was working with an amazing new designer, because I had thought, okay, maybe this new, fresh outlook on the designs can get me like a bit motivated. But it just, again, it just couldn't. And we were doing a bit of traveling before the pandemic hit. But no, what the pandemic did was essentially just made me rethink everything that I wanted. You know, I think it was like a dire time for people in general. And I was, you know, looking at the death rates and stuff, and I was thinking, am I even like motivated? Do I want this to be in my life anymore? What do I actually want? And it just kind of put a firm stop to it. It was like, no, I already knew my gut instinct was right for the last like year or 2 years. I think I should have probably ended it then. But yeah, so that was.
Oh, I'm blown away listening to this, because I didn't think again that you would say that, knowing how passionate you were about your brand and how hard you were.
Yeah, it's so surprising. It's even surprising to me, like, but I think that's just part and parcel of just a human's growth. And especially when it comes to small business, which we were a very small business, majority of it was driven by me. So because majority of it was on my personal shoulders, it was like, okay, no one saw how much it had to take away from my personal life in order to give to the business success of it, which I'm super happy. Obviously, I'm more financially stable than I've ever been in my life, more financially stable than, you know, like even my parents were just blown away and all of that stuff. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But
so you didn't just walk out and give it over for like £1 or whatever. You properly sold it, right?
Yeah, properly sold it. Yeah, enough that now I, you know, it enabled me to buy a house and, you know, all of that good stuff. So, you know, it was very good. Wow. It's been very good to me, like a very good business.
Wow, I'm amazed. Well, congratulations. That's amazing achievement. So, okay, you were always really amazing at marketing. I was always really surprised how you built a community and things. Would you say that was what made your brand successful and helped it grow?
Yeah, definitely building a tribe, building a community, and building that engagement where they're always involved in the process. What I wanted Neon Moon to be was like, the customers were kind of like investors in my mind, because they would invest with their money because they'd buy from us instead of somewhere else. So what I constantly did was engage them in the process. What colors would you like to see? What styles would you like to see? What did you like and dislike about the previous run of, you know, items? What could we do in limited collections? And also we had this amazing page on the website at the time, which had all of their selfies. So imagine being someone who's typically, you know, ignored for having like stretch marks or flaws or, you know, tattoos even, was just shocking at the time. And then we had a page on our website saying, here's a lovely like collage of all of our customers wearing our garments. So that's what really bolstered it, because word of mouth in my mind is like the strongest way to build a company, but also you know, returning customers and customers who always just kept buying the new item, which luckily they did. So
how did you get women to send you pictures of them in underwear? I mean, weren't they shy, or did you pay them money?
Gosh, no. So what it was I think I offered a discount code at the very start, but because we had launched on Kickstarter, it was the press that managed to get them to be more involved in the cause, because the press had two ways of coming about it in terms of Neon Moon, which was we either love it or we hate it. So whenever there was something bad that happened, for example, there was this hate campaign against us called Project Harpoon. Essentially, they were relaying our models as whales, and they were like harpooning the whales.
No.
because they were like larger plus size women. Yeah, can you believe it? So then we actively...
Do you know who did that?
Just some guy on the internet who hates women, clearly. So what we did was we didn't hide from that. We were like, this is what someone is doing. There's this Project Harpoon crap that they're using our models' images. Let's take them down. So then all of our customers rallied together to take them down. And so in doing that, in being like, we're all one team, when I would ask, hey, does anyone have any selfies that we can use to share it? We would love to showcase you and, you know, your glorious like self. They were hands in, always like there for it. But the people who were more shy, we would obviously incentivize them with a discount code as well.
Yeah, I can see how they would, if you create that feeling of one for all, all for one, I can see how they would, you know, feel part of it and send you selfies.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know about that campaign of hate against you. That's crazy. How
Yeah.
long did that go for? How did it resolve?
It resolved because firstly, we had banded the customers together to all report them. So we were like, report this page, let's get it taken down. It will be a win for us and our community. And then the press picked up on it. So the press then, I think it was like BuzzFeed and all of these other publications that then wanted to interview our models to say, you know, how do you feel about this going on? So a mix of that and women banding together was just like, we got the page taken down, we celebrated online, and we were like, cool, let's now get back to business.
Was that on Instagram or Facebook? Where?
That was, I think the project was like on Twitter and Instagram, and I think it was on some website called 4chan, which is kind of like a very evil website that kind of like hates women.
Oh my God.
In my opinion. In my opinion, anyway. But yeah, and I think
what else did you do in terms of marketing? Did you like SEO your website? I mean, how did you get people to, because one of the big challenges I see is that when new brands launch, they think that launch is switching on the website, and then all of a sudden it will be like inundated with sales. And the truth is far from it, right?
Yeah, far from it. So in terms of marketing, number one was PR and press, first and foremost. So at the time, I wrote the press release and included the images, and then sent out the press release to literally every single journalist I could find within the UK and the US. So then once that got picked up, then I would go on like BBC Women's Hour, you know, all these different shows, and then just keep speaking about it, go on podcasts, speak about it wherever and whenever. So then once that PR train was kind of rolling, then I started to invest in SEO. So I took like a course with Danny Richmond, and I learned so much that then I implemented it. So by the time, I think like a couple years in, we were ranking, or our product pages were ranking for like White Triangle Bra UK and stuff like that, which was insane, because, you know, if you search that, ours would be top of Google. And then we did a lot of influencer marketing, and that was very fruitful, because that was at the very kind of start of influencer marketing. and that was just like gifting out items to people, which probably won't have the same effect as it would now. But we dabbled in paid marketing, but that wasn't as fruitful as just trying to get our current customers to speak about it. So then we set up an affiliate program, and that was very fruitful as well, because everyone who likes our products will be more likely to buy it or speak about it to their friends and family, and then they would make money off of it. So it was very good.
Did people have to enroll and you give them a special code or something like this, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they would enroll. So it was like a Shopify plugin, because our website was on Shopify the entire time. It was a plugin for the affiliate program. They would have a code to get people in, and then once they use that code, they would receive like a 10% amount of revenue from that. And because lingerie markup was just so high that there's always room to play around in per order. So yeah, it was very effective.
Did you ever go down into the wholesale side of things? I can't remember.
No, never went wholesale.
Okay, no. So you always had a nice margin then, because you were direct to consumer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I wanted it, because Dessy, our brand was more around the values and the branding that made the product. So there was this one time when we did a pop-up with a style of PB, which was like a sportswear brand, I think. And when I saw our products on the railing without the branding and without the value prop, which was like body positive, feminist, etc., it just looked like any other garment. So why would it justify the cost? And I felt like there is no one better to relay that value prop than us internally within Neon Moon and the team that I had built at that point, instead of the wholesale side of things. So wholesale was definitely not for us. Although I did try with the body studio at Selfridges, just because I love their concept. But apart from that, it was a no.
What was your first hire? Who did you hire first, and when was that? How many years down the line did you hire your first person?
Yeah, so that was, I think, a year in, and her name was Dessy, and she was basically like a marketing coordinator. So she would deal with anything and everything that was going on, like a catch-all person, because I couldn't afford like anyone, just to kind of do one role at the time, or at least I think I was kind of being a bit stingy in terms of like, just trying to keep the money within the business and being cash flow positive. So yeah, she did everything from, organizing shoots, organizing the press to show up, just dealing with interviews, dealing with products. And I would deal with like the stock handling side of things, just making sure that we don't run out, that we have enough but not too much, and all of that crazy juggling.
So you were doing the manufacturing?
Yes.
Nice.
I hated it. I hated it.
I always say it's the most ungrateful job.
So ungrateful, and the amount of sheer work that goes into manufacturing just one garment correctly, it was insane.
It's so important, but whenever something goes right, no one, takes you out for a drink and pats you on the shoulder. It's just taken for granted. You just did your job, hey. But if it goes bad, oh my God, like.
Yeah, and the thing is, if it went bad, so like externally, for example, what had happened? Oh, the best example. So we had done a run of, I can't remember what run it was, large amounts of quantities of items. And then for some reason, the factory decides to send it to my flat than the warehouse. So I then get this huge shipment of huge boxes of garments at my flat. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I then move this to the warehouse? So then I had to take a photo, I had to share it with the customers and be like, this is just what happened. Like, it's just a bit of a mess, but it's fine. Because I kept it completely transparent. But yeah, no one pats you on the back. And the thing is, when a garment goes wrong, so for example, we used a wrong elastic that for some reason, when it was washed in the washing machine, which we told them not to, but some customers did it, the elastic would start to pop out. It became hairy, right? You always see that elastic stuff. so then we hear about complaints a lot more than stuff that goes right. And yeah, it's a whole thing.
What was your, like, before you closed or sold your business, what was your order sizes like? Like, what was the MOQ you were working with?
Yeah, very large at the time. Well, large for us, because at the start it was like maybe hundreds per item, or at least hundreds per SKU. So it was manageable.
From China?
No, not from China, from the UK. From China, way, way higher. It was like maybe 1,000 per SKU. And that was like when I really negotiated, really negotiated.
1,000? I thought 500.
No, I think it was around 1,000, something
All the
like
colors and sizes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were definitely in the big leagues by then. And it was very like scary and daunting. Like that's why I had the warehouse to be in Scotland, so I couldn't easily just pop in, because I was like, I would get scared so much if I kept seeing the stock. But yeah, it enabled us to like just trying to manage the stock levels as efficiently as possible. Because
and did you self-fund it, like from profits, the production of such large MOQ, or did you take investors on board?
No, everything was self-funded. Everything was organically grown. All of the profits just put back in, make a bit more, put back in, make a bit more, put back in. That's why by the end it was just so scary, the amount that was going into like the items. And it was like, okay, let's just make sure that we really get this sold.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew you were doing well, but Christ, I didn't know you were.
Yeah, it was insane, but it had to be done. I think that's the one thing that I learned, which was like a good amount of risk is healthy. And the one thing that we didn't want was, you know, to sell out very quickly and then be stuck with no stock. And because of the, you know, the leeway with China and how long it would take in order to get a new run and all of that juggling, it was like, okay, let's just make sure that we have enough. And we knew when the peak times were. You know, it's always around like Black Friday. Well, summer, for people who are going away on holiday, want new underwear, especially if they have like a new partner in their life. Then Black Friday, then Christmas, then Valentine's, kind of, because we weren't really that kind of a brand. And then, you know, sometimes birthdays and all of that would be intermittent within that. Or if we do a campaign with a you know, an influencer. So for example, we did a talk at the Shards, which I like hired out a floor of the Shards because a friend like owned it. Very, very high net worth guy. I'm very thankful for him. And then we had like all of our models. So it was like a 5-person panel, had loads of people there. And then we saw like an absolute soar in sales because loads of influencers were Instagram storying it and stuff like that. So yeah, so just try to make sure that the stock was, you know, it was justified. So long as it's justified, I can sleep at night.
You know, as I'm listening you say all of this, I'm thinking, you mentioned that you had a broken engagement. You didn't, I mean, you studied economics, but not exactly business. All of this, growing this business, feels a little bit like it was out of your comfort zone. So what support network did you have? Who was, you know, when you were making these big decisions and placing these big orders and paying these big invoices, who was the person holding your hand and saying it's going to be okay, giving you advice or something?
Yeah, I had advisors in very different roles. So for example, Danny Richmond for SEO and just life advice. Like if I need a cry, I would just call him and speak to him. Paul Allen, who had a consultant agency that he then sold to £1 billion American firm. Sarah, who owns Bravissimo, was a very good mentor to me. So I met up with her a good few times a year for like 3 years straight, and she really invested and loved Neon Moon. Not invested in terms of money, invested in terms of time. Yeah, time and advice. Her advice was like insane because, you know, obviously she grew Bravissimo from literally nothing to what it is now. I think at the time she told me it was like £40 million revenue turnover. That's like public information, by the way. So yeah, I had a lot of people who, you know, were kind of like towards the end of their, they've seen all the crap, right? So I wanted to be around people who were willing to trust me and invest in me personally and believed in me to grow the brand. And then they would give me very honest advice, telling me that's crap, or don't ignore the noise, focus on this. And actually it saved me a lot of time and money, if I'm going to be honest. And that's what I wanted. So I never paid for a business mentor, and I highly advise people not to do that unless it's like for you, Dessy, where it's like, it's going to save me money by speaking to you to find out where's a good manufacturer, for example. I feel like there's a lot of like charlatans who will try and like prey on small business owners, and especially women. That's why I surrounded myself with people like you and my other mentors who are just like, they know what they're talking about, but also they're very straight to a point, and that's what I needed.
And how did you meet these people?
Gosh, either through Princess Trust, or I was part of the office that I had first was kind of like a remote working place. It was called Bathtub to Boardroom. I don't know if they're still around, but they had a lot of speakers come in, and I would network with them, or people would recommend me other people. So like, I loved a good lawyer, for example, which came in very handy. And yeah, so I would always go off like word of mouth, and I would always attend talks, or I would do talks, and people would usually speak to me off the back of that. So I would never really, go off of, just like a cold intro with anyone. I would always want a recommendation. And then when people meet me, I think they kind of like vibed with my passion for it. Yeah. And they knew that I was actually going to do something. I think the one thing that I hate when I give advice to some people is the people who expect it to happen by osmosis. So like, if you give a piece of advice, like, use factory X instead of Y, and they don't do anything at all, and then they come back to me a year later and they're like, oh, I'm still in the same position. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't help you, because you can't help yourself. So that's why I'm a person who's like, if you give me a piece of advice, I'm going to do it. So like you said, there are factories in Morocco. I was in Morocco, I was checking out factories. I took pictures. I asked them questions. I liked it. I didn't like it, so I moved on, but I did it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's kind of where it's important, because you can have like the best consultant, but if you're not doing anything with that information, actually putting it to action, there's no point.
Yeah. I see so many people just doing the rounds, talking to all kinds of, as you said, so-called consultants from the wrong backgrounds, getting, asking for free help, discovery calls, downloading PDFs, and you can't run a business like that.
Yeah, no, you can't. And I remember one of the things was I ended up at an accelerator program for a year, and it was very cool, very awesome, completely free. But one of the coordinators was trying to get equity out of my company in like a kind of roundabout way, which made me feel extremely uncomfortable. And this is something that accelerator programs like to do. Yeah. I feel like it's worth trying to just spot, where are people trying to kind of like use you or use your growth. And obviously, people probably don't speak about it, but it does happen quite a fair bit. So yeah, trying to spot that and then like cutting it out as quickly as possible is definitely key.
What was the sales process like? How long did that take? What was so interesting for the buyer to buy your company? How did she value it?
Good question. So it would take a number of touch points before the sale would come through, but usually it would hit a nerve in terms of a pain point. And I think that's the one thing that I wanted to play up, and I did play up, and it worked, and ultimately they loved it as well, because ultimately loads of the lingerie brands or underwear brands, they just made you feel bad at the time. And we didn't. And we would do a number of things like, post regularly on Instagram, send out emails, which were actually of value. I would never make sure that, any junk emails go out. It was always valuable in terms of like just making you smile, or just doing something that would give you a bit extra. And then the process of buying at the time was, we had compliments instead of sizes. So it, number one, made them check what their size was, like actually measure, which always helps in terms of reducing returns. And secondly, it was like unique, and it got us press for actually being like, oh, you're a size gorgeous or a size beautiful, whatever. So then they would have that nice experience. And then going through the checkout, I think at the very end of the checkout, I had a video, which again, I don't think anyone does at the checkout page, because psychologically, there's a pain point where a person typically feels like they've made the wrong decision immediately after they press proceed with a checkout and the money is taken. So in order to combat that pain point and to reduce cancellations or even any elements of doubt, was to have a video of me there kind of like saying, thanks for getting involved, like you're great, you know, like something like that, just to make them feel reassured that they've made the right decision and that we accept returns, and all these like objections that they might have afterwards is kind of combated there and then. Making sure that the shipping company shipped it to them as quickly as possible. My God, the amount of compliments that we had on like, oh, I received it the next day, even though I placed my order at 5 p.m. or something, which is like insane. And also, I think we were one of the very first brands that actually put like the piece of lingerie, which, you know, because they're bralettes and knickers very folded very flat, into tote bags, which again wasn't something that most brands did. They put it into plastic packaging, so we put it into tote bags. We kept everything very environmentally friendly, and they reused the tote bags and actually shared how they reused the tote bags because it had our branding on it. So
you mean like little pouches, right?
Yeah, those pouches, the tote bag pouches for sure. Yeah, so that was very nice as well, because it enabled them to reuse it and see our branding as well. And that was, again, something that not a lot of brands were doing. And
that whole sales and nurture process, where did you learn that? Because it's totally unfashiony, and it's still unfashiony. Like no one really does it. You see this a lot in marketing, in the online marketing world, you know, when you sign up for a course or I don't know, something, but not in fashion.
Yeah, one of the things that I had done, which I think was very cheeky, I like to be cheeky. So what I had done was I had ordered from a bunch of like the competitor lingerie brands whilst I was setting up Neon Moon, and I wanted to see what their process was. And I took everything that I liked and implemented it into the Neon Moon. Everything I didn't like, I left to the very side. And yeah, it's never, and I think this is why probably I did so well, was I think I came at it from a point of like business and actually just thinking, what would I like? What would I like? And what's rational and real? And what's the process? And trying to figure out what are the user buyer stuff. Because one of the things with being a small business, which will always have the upper hand over a larger business, is the hands-on approach to learning about the customers, because a customer will reply back to an email and be like, hey, I can't wait to receive, you know, this item because I bought it from my mum for her 50th birthday. It's like, okay, so we have a use case here of daughters who will buy it for their mums. Why do they buy it for their mums? Email back, hey, love it, like ask why, and they'll be like, oh, my mum has like back problems, and actually a bralette is actually really useful because she will never wear an underwire in her life. There we go. Write it down, note it down. Okay, what can we do on Mother's Day that will hit that to get more daughters to buy for their mums? And I think for me, I was just thinking, okay, what's the strategy behind this? And by actually listening and implementing our learnings, what can we do to just like reduce the friction that they might have and give them something extra that no other lingerie brand would do, which is to speak to me, and then I implement it. And then sometimes I will send them a free gift if it's actually a really, really good piece of advice that they've given, or a bit of insight that we've never had before, that even I had never thought about. Because, for example, I would never buy my mum a bra. She would tell me, no, thank you. Obviously, she wore Neon Moon. But yeah, so I think that's the one thing that's the biggest downfall, where if you get too hung up on the product and the fashiony side of it, you forget or negate the business side, which will always be the bolstering factor of the sales, because everything is dominated by where the money comes in. And one of the things which was very interesting, for example, I think I used it in a bunch of different talks, was, so we had this winning bra that was like, I think a black bralette or a white bralette, something like that. Was it? Yeah. So then what we did was, for a limited edition, we thought, let's combine the two, winner, winner, combine the two. This will be great. So then we created a white bra that had black trimming. And oh my God, Dessy, it bombed. It absolutely bombed. And we were like, why the heck did this bomb so badly? Started to ask the customers, hey, why have you not like kind of bought this? Because typically we had our like top customers who would buy every single item. So I asked them, why did you guys not buy this? And they were like, oh, it's because, I actually work and I have like a white shirt that I need to wear, and that black trimming will show under the white shirt. Because typically I like to be comfy at work. I'm at my desk and that's when I wear your bra. And that would show. And I was like, okay, that makes complete sense. So then it's like, okay, let's just mark it down and get rid of it. So yeah, I think it's a lot of trying to use the business acumen. And if you don't have it, who can you get involved in your fashion brand? Who can? So that's why towards the end, I wanted a fashion designer to be involved, who she would design the pieces. And I used a lot of like ad hoc designers to design the pieces, away from the very basic bralette and bra. We actually had mesh towards the end, polka dot. We had like a mix of the two. It was like very sexy, very lacy and very strappy, which I would never have thought of. And so that took part of the creative side of my brain, which I don't have. And I would just concentrate on like the business and the selling side.
What were the jobs you were holding before you launched Neon Moon? I'm trying to understand, where does this logical business savvy thinking is coming from? Because most people don't have that. I don't know whether it's because they're scared to think like this and they doubt themselves, or they're just not, they're more creatively maybe wired.
Yeah, it's a very good point, because even if I think about the jobs that I had before Neon Moon, I wouldn't necessarily feel like it aided anything towards what I was doing, well, apart from one. So I worked at a financial recruitment agency, so I had that sales side. So I'm never afraid to pick up the phone, because my God, I had to hit those numbers every single day in terms of sales. I did charity fundraising, like on the streets, those charity people who try and get you to sign up. I did that, so I'm never afraid to go up to people. I actually worked at a PR and wholesale agency for a lingerie agency that dealt with like 5 luxury lingerie brands. So I saw what I liked and what I didn't like in that. And I always wanted to try and get them to be more like bold, but they were like, no, we're luxury, so we don't do that. So they had brands like Princess Tam Tam, Eberge, all of these really fancy brands that were in like Selfridges and Harrods and stuff like that. So luckily they put me, because I was an intern, and I guess they didn't really think that I would do much with my life, if I'm being honest. That they included me in a lot of meetings, like, oh, hey, it's nice, like, you can learn something. Like, they really didn't think that I would do anything with it. But actually, a lot of what they taught me, I implemented, and they were so pissed, I think, because I tried to set up a meeting with them afterwards, being like, hey, I guess you probably learned about me in Lingerie Insight, because I was in all of the lingerie publications at the time. And they were like, yeah, we did. And no, we don't want to speak to you again. I was like, okay, fine. So a lot of that, but also my parents are very hardworking people who came to this country to try and make like a better life for themselves. So for example, my dad worked like 3 jobs, like a baker in the night, and like during the day he drove like taxis and stuff like that. And then my mom, she worked like a million jobs. So she came to a country as like a cleaner, and then like worked her way up to become a teaching assistant at a school. So I saw like the hard work and the hard ethic that came with that. And also my dad will also teach me how to negotiate as a young child. He would like use me, like try and get me to like use my little like young charm to try and get like a discount off of stuff. So again, I started to learn, the element of business and negotiations, and getting stuff cheaper is better than paying full price and stuff like that. So I think a mix of all of that stuff, and yeah, just not feeling shy and just being out there. And I would, believe it or not, I was super shy during university, during my economics degree. I wouldn't really speak to anyone. I was very introvert, believe it or not. Yeah, I think a lot of people are. It's so weird, but I was exceedingly introvert. Like, you could not get a word out of me. And then something just switched, which I just don't know what happened, but I just kind of like, I started to learn that the people in life who were doing the best weren't necessarily just the smartest or the most talented, but the people who were good at people, like actually getting on with people, building their network and actually just making friends out of people, and being able to be a good communicator, and also standing the ground and negotiating and getting through the door. And even now, I'm not afraid of no's whatsoever. I just keep going and just think, well, a no's a no. What of it? Keep going. So yeah, I think that's probably why I am the person I am.
Yeah, you said you would pick up the phone and every day call people to make the numbers. Like, who would you call?
Yeah, so that was as part of the like recruitment agency.
Oh, yeah, not for the
Yeah,
lingerie, not for
yeah,
neon. Okay, I was like, huh? Who did she call every day?
That was part of the recruitment agency, which they would task you with
Yeah. That's how I get.
a day or something. Yeah.
Do you think you'll go back to fashion one day?
Good question. I think that there would have to be an element of tech in there with it, because I think my brain is more about strategy and process. And I'm not saying that fashion brands aren't, but I feel like where I provide the most value is thinking about the consistent recurring revenue side of things. And sometimes it's just not really in a fashion brand. So I've worked on like a consulting basis with a few of my friends and their fashion brands in order to get them press, in order to get them some sort of like marketing push. And that's always worked. And I love doing that on the side, but predominantly during my day, I want it to be around more tech elements.
And that's what you're doing a little bit now, aren't you? Or a lot?
Yeah, a lot now, yeah.
Okay, so you sold the company and you got yourself a job, or are you a partner?
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
Yeah, so when I sold the company, I made a post, celebrating. Then I was reached out to a few. I was very lucky. I got reached out to by a few companies, and one of which was called React and Share, which are a SaaS company based in Finland, which sell a software for the public sector predominantly, or charities, or not-for-profits within the UK and Finland and anywhere else in the world. And I really like what they're doing in order to try and use feedback and insights to make their, customers' lives better through better web content. And they were hiring. Initially, I went in to speak about products because I love, improving product and using that to, increase sales. But having spoken to me about my background, they hired me to be their first CMO, so their chief marketing officer. And I was very, very excited about that. So I guess that's probably, again, something that founders should take into account, especially small business, where, the failure rate is so high, it's so hard. But actually what got me into this role, which is an amazing role, dream fit role for me, is the fact that I did the marketing so well during the company that I can use that to bolster the fact that I was perfect for the role that they were hiring for. So yeah, I'm very happy at React and Share.
So having learned what you've learned now about the tech world and looking back at fashion, what do you think fashion needs? Because I'm of the opinion that fashion actually it's pretty backward and not as innovative as they'd like to think that they are. I think there's so many tricks that they're missing, like most fashion brands. Like even some of the stuff you were saying that you're doing, I don't see most small brands doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm completely of the same opinion. I think so many things are kind of like, I think fashion, what it does is it puts this false belief in like small business owners that this is the one way we do it. One way we do it, this is the correct way we do it, and you need to fit that. And I think that's the difference with how I did it, which was I had spoken, for example, to a UK factory, and I said, okay, I understand how you do it with these big boys and stuff, and they have their processes and stuff. But let's try and limit it down and let's change it, because I don't like that. And this is how I work. So for example, they asked me for design patterns and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't have the money to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show up at the factory. You're going to put me in any old bikini or like toile, and I'm going to point to my body as to how I want it to fit, and you're going to draw it on me. Like, this is how we're going to do it. And it worked, and it was completely fine. And we built a block that we then used for the rest of it, and it was a perfect fit. So I feel like being a disruptor is definitely what the fashion scene needs. I think there's a lot of like crap advice going out there that doesn't need to be adhered to. Like, why? Asking the question why is the best thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I probably did so well, which was because the fact that I haven't come from a fashion background.
Yeah.
So I just learned as I was going, and I realized what's super inefficient, I'm just going to cut out, and what's efficient, we're going to keep in. So yeah, I think the fashion industry needs more disruptors, more innovators, more people to listen to your advice, which I learned a lot from you and your blogs and your videos. I'm a huge fan of your vlogs, and I think it's super efficient to just learn every day from people like you and just ignore what's kind of like standard or stuff that you've learned from a previous, you know, fashion brand that you used to work at. So for example, I did an internship at a fashion brand, which was like a haute couture brand when I was super young, because that was the time I loved fashion and stuff. And I just didn't like it. I hated everything they were doing. I thought it was so inefficient. I thought it was such a mess behind the scenes. And one of the things that I wanted to put into Neon Moon was, if we are going to do this, I don't want to create any more chaos in our lives, and I want the chaos to be removed. Because one of the best things that I think I ever did was created such a streamlined process that I was like desirable as a customer to the factory, to a point where I remember at like verbatim, the owner of the factory said, "Thank you for placing an order with us. Actually, our seamstresses love to create your items because it's so easy and so clear to them how to make it. So they just get through it and they like meditate somehow towards it." Whilst with other brands, and I think he did name some cheekily, he told me, he was like, they fucking hate making their items like it. And for some reason, there's something in that I can kind of sense when you receive the bulk of the items, because it's never over until you've received it and, you know, quality checked it. I can tell that there's a lot more care and love into everything that they do with our garments. So that was a huge point.
What did you do so simple that the machinists loved?
Created processes that were just different to everyone else's. You know, for example,
give me an example, like what?
So for example, like, I don't know, patterns, you know, instead of them spending a year and a day to like create a brand new one, okay, let's use the current one and tweak it slightly, or what can we do? Or listen to what they were saying, you know, is there anything better that you would advise? And luckily, by befriending these people, because I really didn't treat them like, that was the one thing that in fashion I absolutely hated, which was treating manufacturers or factory owners or the seamstresses in the factories as like some sort of resource. Like, they're not human beings.
Yeah.
So for example, after every single time we did a run, I would send them a big box of chocolates, and
I always talk about this, like, if someone can remove the ego of the fashion industry, especially in manufacturing, like what designers thinking that they're so much better than the people making their product, and then whining and dining the PR and marketing teams, but treating manufacturers like dogs' bodies. Oh.
Yeah, shocking. And the amount of stories that I heard from them as well, because they would say it, they would like hate certain designers or certain people who come from the factory. And I feel like you could tell that, you know, I don't know, you can just sense it in their quality as well. So with me, it was like they would always try and find a slot for me, or they'll be like, hey, we have like some roll of very fancy fabric that a customer no longer wants to use and we now own it. Would you like to use it at a fraction of the cost? They would offer this stuff to me. And that's why I never really spent a lot of time on the front end with like, we never did, you know, schmoozing and all of that stuff. It was more about how can I ensure that the supply chain is as efficient as possible. And when they know that Hayat from Neon Moon has placed another order, they know exactly what to do. To a point where we wanted to film them making it, for example, and they were like, we never usually allow this because usually the seamstresses are super shy, but for you, Hayat, we will do this because we love you. You know? And it was like, great, my customers will love to see, you know, the people actually make the garments, and it actually, you know, created more sales.
I'm so glad you're saying this, because I often talk about how personal manufacturing is, and that if you develop a relationship with someone and they like you, they would go out of their way to help you. But it's one thing me saying it, you know, and people thinking, oh, because you worked in, you know, big brands, blah, blah, blah. It's another thing you saying it as a small brands.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what
Stronger.
it's such a problem. It's such an innate, like, systemic problem, which I don't understand. So, for example, we want to change direction. So we want to get a bit more, like, after we did our first run, we want to be a bit more sexier. And that's where we're starting to lean towards like silks and like mesh and stuff like that. So in order, because I was like, let me go and see you at the factory, and I'll explain what we're doing and, you know, why you can be involved and stuff. I presented it to them with like I presented like a report on like what we were doing, like an actual meeting that they could flick through this, like, you know, document that I had whipped up. And so all of them, the management of this factory, had this document that they were reading, and I was presenting it, and I was trying to get buy-in, and they were like, hey, we've never had this from anyone. Like, we've never had anyone come in with documents, like trying to get us to get involved and like to share what we think and our feedback. And
you mean like show respect and treat them as business people?
That's like, it. Like,
shocking.
Yeah, shocking. They were actually shocked though. Like, removing the sarcasm, they were surprised. And I think that's the one thing that, because small businesses, we know that we're at a disadvantage. We want lower quantity. We don't have enough money to put in like large, you know, orders of these big brands that they have on board. And we can get like shut out if the big brands want more. And then, you know, obviously they're going to be like, no, hey, sorry, we have Harrods coming in with a larger order. But that's why it made it more exciting for them. Because believe it or not, the factories are actually on the sides of the little guys because they can grow with us.
Yeah.
The big guys, they know their power. They will push them on, squeeze them on price and treat them like crap and, you know, be
bully
like,
them.
oh, we're going to
basically bully them.
Bully them, harass them to be like, if you don't give us a good price on this, we will go elsewhere and all of that. Whilst the small guys like us can treat them with respect, so then they can grow with us and actually want to be more with us because they don't want these big guys who have the power, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the one thing that I had never seen in any other brand.
Do you know, I really miss traveling to factories. This pandemic is killing me because of the lack of travel, but also not being able to go to factories. I love it. I love meeting people in factories and just chatting and looking at product and all of that.
I know last time I visited the factory was like the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And yeah, it was very nice to go in there, see what they were doing, see their process. And yeah, usually, and the beauty with factories that believe in you, they will bend the rules. Like, they're, you know, it's not even bending the rules. You can create new rules. So for example, initially,
for starters, there's no rules. In fashion, there is no rules.
No, there are no rules. And it's about creating new ones that can be a benefit for you. So for example, there was one like typical rule that they had, which was like, oh, you buy the fabric and all of that stuff up front, and then we'll use it, and you can do a huge run there and then. So I was like, okay, well, what about if, you know, I buy a roll of this very expensive fabric, but we use it over time? So then I can place smaller orders, but in more, you know, it's better for the cash flow and everything, but we've bought the items and it's just sitting in the factory. And they were like, okay, we can do that. So then it gives them more work consistently. So then they just don't have one big chunk of work.
Is that your UK factory, or was that in China?
UK. In China towards the end, I was actually pretty good in negotiating, where the beauty with China was I didn't have to source anything. They would source it all, right? So it was completely fully factored, which was amazing. A lot of like hassle off the table. And they were great because towards the end, because they knew that we were growing, and there was an element of respect there after a few meetings, because there was a lot of culture for me to learn.
Did you go out to China?
Yeah, I highly recommend going out and seeing it for yourself. And I think there's a bit of difficulty. I knew that I probably should have taken like a man with me. This sounds so bad, but like culturally, I don't think I got enough of like the respect for being a woman. But it is what it is. So yeah, there are no rules, and yeah, I miss it as much as you do. I miss traveling to factories, even though I don't work in fashion anymore.
Okay, let's wrap this up because I want to be respectful of your time. What advice do you think was the best advice you've ever received that kind of served you over time? that you kept relying on?
Mm. Well, it's nothing that anyone had really told me, but I had known that being bold and keeping up that momentum was key. You know, really believing that why shouldn't my brand be amongst other people's brand? Why shouldn't it be featured on this list with, like, you know, brands that have been around for 20 years? Why not? Why not? You know, and I think that's the one thing that I've seen that is lacking during the amount of talks that I've done towards fashion entrepreneurs, which is the confidence factor.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I'm too shy, or oh, I'm playing it safe. And playing it safe, you're just going to kill it. Like,
Yeah.
why start a business if you're just going to play it safe? Like, what kind of infinite money do you have that you can play it safe? I just don't understand it. So I feel like being bold, being unapologetically bold, is absolutely key, because whether you have money or not, it will always serve you towards the best, I
Do you
think.
have, weird question, but do you have siblings?
I have one younger brother.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Why'd you ask?
Because I would have thought that either you're a single child or a middle child.
A lot of people say I'm like a clear, like, single child, like, you know.
Oh,
Only
middle child, because middle children have to fight for attention, you know, so.
Yeah, I know. For some reason, I have like an only child syndrome, where I'm just like, got to be center of attention. And also, you know, the business essentially had to be that as well, because I was just not fearful whatsoever. I was like, this
That's
business needs
amazing.
to get everywhere. And I was just like, I would not stop. I would be like super just like out there, even to a point where I was emailing like the presenter of ITV News, like Charlene Williams, I think. And she got back to me. She was like, I love what you're doing, but, you know, we can't feature it on ITV News. I was like, okay, why not? But, you know, just like reaching out to people, being unafraid. And whether you are, you know, a single child or not, I feel like just pretending like pretending like the world revolves around you and your company. And if you truly believe that your company is going to do well, and you want it to do well for whatever your personal why is, I think that's the one thing that got me through. I was just thinking about what's my personal why, which is to become financially independent, to not have to think about, you know, trying to find a job and trying to fit into that mold at the time. And that kept me going. I would not stop. And at the time I was engaged, so I had that as well. I wanted me and my ex, to be a success, and, you know, for me to provide that and stuff like that. So using that personal why to build up this passion. If you don't have that, then I just feel like just quit. Like, just quit. Stop wasting your time. Don't waste money, and find an actual job.
Yeah, I mean, there's other things to do. There's like
There's
so much more to life than struggling and pushing a boulder uphill.
Yeah.
The fashion brand that's struggling because it's vanilla and you're afraid to be different. And
that's it. And I feel like if you are afraid and you do have that risk averse feeling, just work for another fashion brand. There is no shame in working for another company, in my opinion.
Or take a partner who, you know, plugs those weaker points of your personality in.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not able to do that, then don't. But yeah, I think finding that other person, I think that's one thing that I would have done in hindsight, Dessy, is have a business partner from the start who's equally good but has that fashion asset, because I feel like we would have grown way better. Like, imagine me being the business person with a fashion person from the very get-go. I feel like I don't even know how successful it would have been.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, don't know what you don't know. But
what would be your advice to someone, you know, growing a brand?
Growing a brand, use a lot of free resources to learn from, and just keep up stock and keep up bringing new items out. I think that's the one thing that kept the attention of the current customers, because obviously it's cheaper to sell to current customers. Keeping their attention with limited edition runs, which essentially limited edition is just small quantity in a different fabric, which was very cost effective. So yeah,
keeping your bread and butter, your core collection going, right? Okay, you're opening a can of worms here. This is like such a big topic, because I see a lot of people constantly trying to bring in new products out, but dropping everything else. And as you know, and I know, new products is a lot of time, a lot of new investment, and you're never recouping your investment in development,
Yeah.
you're always reinventing the wheel, whereas you really need to keep going with your bread and butter. You know what's your best sellers are.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that was one thing that Sarah from Bravissimo had taught me, which was find out what your key bestsellers are and always have them. Always set a certain amount, like a percentage towards your spend, towards your core, so they never run out and they're always there. They're the evergreen, items. You spent so long trying to figure out that they work, keep them there, never remove them. Make sure that the SEO runs on them, so then you can start investing in that as well. And then spend a little bit of budget, 20 to 30% of your annual revenue or profit or whatever, towards bringing out these more risky items, the black trim and the mesh and the straps and,
very messy, attracting attention.
Yeah, exactly. Grabbing that attention with something new. And if they like it, if they don't, learn from it and then keep going. Always keep risking the new stuff, but keeping the core solid, because they bring in the money, they pay the bills. So yeah, I think a balance of that, but also just keeping their attention, keeping customers involved and keeping their attention. But also one of the great analogies that I use is, your business is like a full bathtub, but the bottom of the bath is kind of like a jar. So a little bit of water is constantly leaking out. So you need to constantly keep filling it. And that's essentially what a business is. You can't rely on certain customers to always be there, because they won't. So it's always about keeping new customers coming in, but caring about them enough to try and keep them there, whilst loads of customers will always keep leaving naturally.
Oh my God, I love this conversation. It's so fantastic.
Oh my God.
I can just easily do another hour at least.
I know, we could go forever. We really could. Maybe we should, if your followers want to hear more or any specific subjects,
let's do that. Let's do a follow-up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Cool. Well, listen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dessy. Thanks for having me.
I have so much more respect than when we first started. It's doubled in the space of an hour.
I know, it's insane. And thank you for always being so supportive towards me, because I remember showing up to your business, your offices in West London, and you've always been so supportive. So thank you. And if anyone has any questions from anything I've said, my name's Hayat. I'm on Twitter at Hayat.
I'll put all your links and stuff, but I think I might collect questions and do another round.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Have to answer them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.